to figure out how we do it.
It's like amazing that we sleep at night.
We have VHS.
Okay, good. Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to our monthly Community of Interest meeting for Evolving the Workforce. We have a really fabulous presentation today, and I am very excited for you to hear all about the Compass Challenge from the people who thought it up and have continued to make it happen, and they're going to give you all those really interesting details in just a few minutes. We have a number of things underway right now with our community of interest. We have programs and projects, and I'm going to turn it over to Andrew to give you some project updates. For the programs that we have coming up in April, we have a group, a panel that includes MITRE people as well as a representative from the Office of Management and Budget to talk about their workforce symposium they conducted last September. And then in May, we have a panel of government people who are working on career paths for cybersecurity workers, and they're going to talk to you about their work. So that's what we have upcoming. Before I turn it over to Andrew, I just want to thank Robyn and Dorothy for being here today. We're really grateful that you would come and share your information with us, so thank you very much. Now I'd like to introduce Andrew McCoy from Learning Tree, who is going to tell you about our project update.
Yeah, good morning. Andrew McCoy, the Vice Chair for the Community of Interest, and we've got two project updates specifically within the COI and another one that is workforce related that I wanted to highlight. But the project on workforce mobility and using data analytics is in its final stages. We are doing the final COI leadership review as we speak, submitting it to ACT-IAC for their review and comment before hopefully publication before the end of the month the beginning of April, because there's actually a workforce summit, I think it's the 2nd of April, that Terry Schaefer, who is our government chair for the COI and also the project lead, is already speaking at and wants to kind of roll that out at that conference. Our second project, which is working on the workforce reskilling, both, hey, what's the disruption with IT modernization, what's the career path for individuals, and then how do organizations create their strategic plan to make sure that they're empowering their workforce to be successful within the 21st century within, hey, the new roles and the technologies that are going to be available. We kicked that off within the last month, starting kind of our research phase, and then going to be delivering different deliverables within that project as we move forward. And then thirdly, the Cyber COI is doing a project that they are also looking for volunteers for if anybody has cyber-specific interest. That I wanted to make people aware, but their project, while it's somewhat related to our others, is looking at formally acknowledge the roles aligned within cyber work, the training programs that are in place, looking at compensation, and just looking at ways that the federal government can kind of meet the cyber demand that they have within the future and make up the shortfall that we have. They've got a lot of volunteers, and it is a cyber COI led effort, but they are looking for kind of our support, and if anybody with more of a workforce or human capital perspective can kind of bring that in and work for their group. For going back to my project, IT skilling, we are also looking for government volunteers for that project. We have a couple and would need a few more just to really roll out the public-private partnership. And once again, Andrew McCoy, my contact information is on the ACT-IAC website. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions about the workforce mobility, the Evolving the Workforce Reskilling Project, or the cyber-specific reskilling project. I'll be able to put you in contact with the right point to contact with that. But without further ado, I'll get to the program. That's why everybody's here. We've got Ms. Dorothy Aronson from NSF, the CIO, and Robyn Rees, formerly of NSF, now at Department of Interior, but very passionate about workforce reskilling. They created the Career Compass Challenge the end of last year, and had the pleasure of working with them to put on a presentation at the Imagination ELC conference that we had in Philadelphia in October, and they were of the top 5 presentations of the 30 or 40 ones that we had. So they were great, and looking forward to hearing the changes and updates with them on the challenge and their overall workforce reskilling and upskilling programs.
Great.
I'll kick it over. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew McCoy.
Dorothy, before we start, I think that because we're the only presenters, we should aim to be the top one.
Yes.
I don't know, Robyn, I kind of always like to go for a B. I feel like we work too hard. We need to give ourselves a little room. And I think you'll see a lot of B work when you watch this presentation. So I would like to start by saying that the reason Robyn and I are doing this challenge is to get the word out, to help people think differently about the future. So there's a lot of slides in here and a lot of pictures. The most important thing, though, is that we're here talking to you today. We want you to think differently. And so we are going to tag team this. We feel like this is the most exciting thing we've done in our careers so far, and we want you to feel the same level of enthusiasm and help us take it across the finish line.
Great. Thank you, Dorothy. And thank you all for coming here and for being on the phone and listening. And thanks very much to the group who invited us to come talk here today. As I was walking here this morning, I thought to myself, what do I want out of today's session? And I have a hope that when you leave here or log off from this presentation, that every time you stop today, you think about this topic. And bonus points is when you stop and think about this topic and you think about it from the lens of where you sit in relation to what we're about to present to you, and move us even 1 inch forward. Because it's a very complex challenge, right? And there's a reason why we went about it in the approach we're about to talk to you about. It takes each one of us from where we sit figuring out how to move us forward.
Yes.
So with that,
by stop, I think she means have a drink of coffee every time you sit on the metro, sit in your car. Okay, yes. That's a few times. You're going to think about us again.
When you breathe.
You can dream about it if you wish. Okay, go.
So let's take you on our journey. It looks a lot like this. A blank slate.
Uh-oh, something's going on. Let me go
forward again. Let's see if we can get to the right slide.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Work, I'm telling you.
But let's tell you, every time that I meet with people about the Career Compass Challenge, it's not enough for me to start from where I sit in the Career Compass Challenge today. I have to start from where we began, because the story is what we're talking about here today. And where did we begin? A little over a year ago.
We started, I'm an IT person, I'm a CIO, and the words artificial intelligence, everyone was like talking about it and wondering whether it was a real thing or not a real thing. It was like high on the hype chart at that time. And I really wanted to do something different at NSF. And so we started looking for projects where we could apply artificial intelligence. And so we were looking everywhere. We started by looking at the NSF Business Process, which is right here.
So when Dorothy came to me after a meeting with the leadership of the agency and said, Robyn, we're going to insert artificial intelligence into the merit review process at the National Science Foundation. Your job is to help me figure out what to do with the workforce. And I said, sure, I'm an expert in that, not. But how do you start with something like that? We had to start from the mission we're trying to accomplish and from how we accomplish that mission today. And you'll see in this image here that there are people in that, right? People carry out every step of the NSF mission. They plan, they review, they award, they manage, they look at the results. They do that leveraging technology from one end to the other. So when we insert artificial intelligence into a step of the merit review process, who's touched by it? That was our starting point. We had to get to a different place, not from a technology perspective, but from the perspective of the other person at the other end.
So we took this approach, which is we said, I'm giving you, this is a little introductory thing to my icons. Like, I'm an image-driven person, just so you know. So the X represents the project. So this project, it helps take you to a destination X, and you're going to see this in the future, in the next slide. But each project, the colors matter, have IT people, have IT, data, and people. So when you're working with artificial intelligence, everyone knows you need some sort of algorithm, right? You need some sort of big set of data in order to make sense of, use the algorithm, and you need people to make the thing work. So each project cannot proceed unless all three of these things move forward simultaneously. And so here what you see is IT people and data. This is a good project. One that, when I'm pointing to folks, is the one in the middle that says yes, okay? So in this case, you have a project that is going in the direction of the future, the X, the green X at the end. You can also choose to have a project that falls outside of the destination X. That's a bad project. You don't want to do that one, okay? Now, and you don't want to end up with a project that doesn't have the people with it. Okay, none of those are good. The reason these icons are important is because we had so much to choose from. So we had a plethora of ideas of things we might be able to start on, and we couldn't figure out. First, we had to figure out generally what the future was, and then we kind of had to sort through these projects and figure out which one would take us even an inch, a centimeter towards the future. So this is the notion of, some people call it agile. I think it's even smaller than that. Every project, every act you take, this conversation, if it takes us closer to the X, it's a successful project. Okay?
And a few notes I'll make here quickly is that a lot of times what I've seen in my career in the IT side is that when we consider IT, people, and data, we're considering IT the technology, people the IT people, and data. And we move forward. But the point here is that the people are other than us. Right? They're everybody else. And so when you're moving forward with IT, now the technology and the people, and data, you're leaving out a critical component, and that's why we have a no on this one. Don't do that. The other thing that I want to point out is that one of the things that Dorothy has taught me and that I'll never, ever move forward without is that it's critical when you're moving in an organization to make sure that the destination is clear, so that everything you do, you spend $1 on 3 things instead of $3 on 3 things, right? But if the destination isn't clear, then these projects that happen outside of the yellow arrow are just fun things to do, but they don't get you towards your goal, right? So why are we here today? We want you all to walk away with an understanding of a very clear destination for workforce transformation, okay? Then everything you do can be looked at through that lens, and we can get a lot more with $1 than we can, individually doing our own things.
Thank you. So if advanced technologies are someday going to so here's the X. Advanced technologies are going to, using intelligent technologies are someday going to enable the entire merit review process at NSF. That's the fantasy. So with respect to NSF, everything we do is going to have an AI component.
And we asked ourselves, if we understand where people sit in relation to the NSF mission today, could we identify what roles are in the plan process or in the review step of the process? And understanding who sits there today helps us get ready to sequence technology insertion, right? So if I know where people are today and I know that I want to put AI in our review step of the process, I need to look at who the people are that are carrying out the review step of the process today. And if we could imagine that future of where artificial intelligence is doing some portion of the work, I can then allow myself to imagine what the future workforce needs would be. They're doing different work, right? They're doing work that's not rote, right? And we can then bring the people along with us. So like you saw in Dorothy's slide before with the arrow in the future at the end, is that as you're doing your work, always be bringing the people along with you instead of trying to reskill them at the end, right?
So here's what's happening next. we're thinking about this world where artificial intelligence is, first off, also we're very optimistic thinkers. We are not, we know that there are people out there who are thinking this AI is going to come over, it's going to ruin people's lives, it's going to take their jobs, and we refuse to see the world that way. We know that that AI will also introduce new jobs and that there will be new things happening. And so we're trying to figure out, though, how does the individual today get to that future place and what do we use artificial intelligence for? And Robyn, who's an avid reader, so I'm not a reader. This is a partnership. This is an aside about partners. You should always look for people in your world who are not like you. I never read a word. Robyn reads everything. So one morning, Robyn comes in and says, I've read this article. I think it's exactly what we're thinking. I'm not really sure. And we read parts of that article, I think, over and over again. We could not figure out what was going on, how it was possibly working. And then the word person, Robyn, describes the theory to me, and this is what I put together from the Forbes article. So the Forbes article also notes who was doing this. So it was about a company, Cisco, that had created or was describing a workforce tool that they were putting together. And what we imagined they were putting together would look something like this, which was if you had a workforce today, those are the blue people, and because I grew up in the 60s, 50s, 60s, not 40s, the people I chose were cartoon characters: Fred Flintstone, Wilma, Barney, Betty, SpongeBob. That's because I have kids of that age, and then Gary, the snail. Every one of us has a snail in our organization. Most of the time, it's the leader. So we knew these little funny characters represent the skills of these people. If we could also know what jobs would exist 5 years from now, we don't know how to do it, but if we knew that, we could ask Fred, we could say, hey, Fred, you're an asterisk and an exclamation point. Those are your skills today. What are you going to do in 2023? Here are some jobs. Pick one that looks good to you. Now, Fred, because he has an and sign, he could have picked in IT specialist and then just picked up the new second and sign. Guys, understand how I'm describing this picture? A little nod would be great. Okay, thanks. Thank you, nodding people on the phone. But he chooses something, data science, which is completely different from what he's doing today. But he's choosing. The important fact is he knows who he is today, he knows what's coming down the line, and he chooses his destiny. He chooses that. Then somehow an application shows him how to get there. The yellow arrow represents a series of detail opportunities, training opportunities, jobs. It could even be, if you're a reader like Robyn, it could be a series of articles that it pops up and shows you every day some information so that you're gradually, every day you come to work. Fred comes to work now. He's doing whatever he's doing. He comes to work. He's looking 5 years out, and instead of just doing the work he's doing today, he's also focusing some on the future and trying to get there. And so this is what we derived. It might not be perfectly accurate, but this is what our imagination did with the Forbes article.
So what Dorothy just described is very early on, just trying to get something on paper that we could talk to other people about what we were envisioning in terms of a mechanism for turning the story about advanced technologies being a disruptor on its head, right? We believe that advanced technologies might also help people learn and get ready for the next job. And we wanted to have that conversation. And we didn't come up with this picture all on our own out of our heads. We had to read and partner and talk to people and engage with people like you that come to this community of interest and hear from your thoughts, and then we could put something down on paper. There is no original idea. You get it? So,
and everybody we talked to gave us more information. So if you guys lingered after this talk, which I'm not advocating for because we have to rush out. But if you were to do that, I'm sure you could give us ideas that would even make this picture better. And so we were really, without sort of knowing it, we were crowdsourcing based on everything people told us existed. And so for us, that was so real. It became very clear and real to us. And so then the next thing that happens on our timeline, I don't know if Robyn explained the reason the chart looks like this. Did she tell you guys this, why there's three components?
That's good. Yeah.
Okay, so there's three components here because life is not just one thing happening at one time, right? There's everything, have you ever watched an art history show where it says, okay, and then this guy became czar, and that's why all this art was created, or that's why this music, or that's why this dancing came about. So the world happens, many things are happening in the world at the same time. So this period of time between January and June, we were working at NSF to put artificial intelligence into the business process. We were really doing that. We're not going to talk about that today, but it was another thing that was happening in real time at the same time. We were also reading about how we might use AI differently for workforce issues. We also learned about something called Technology Modernization Fund. Have you guys heard of this? This is where there's money available from the federal government. You submit an idea, you get a bit of money to build the thing you want to build, and we're all like, oh, this is the coolest thing ever. We submitted 2 ideas. One of them was this idea. We loved it. Did NSF need money? No. So we put in the idea, we submitted this idea to the TMF for $0. And guess what? They didn't pick it up. I mean, that is the most amazing thing. I was so sure, because what we were looking for was partners. All we wanted was other people to help us build this, because we had no idea where we were going with it. We just wanted people to talk about it, and talking is free in some way. So
I have to jump in here and say that this is where, in life and in work, you have to take some risks. Right? I'm sitting there listening to Dorothy say, let's submit this to the TMF fund for $0. And I'm thinking, it's not legacy IT that requires modernization that we're going to pay back. We can't, it's new. And she said, no, we don't need any money. We just want to find out if other people are interested in the same thing, because we need to talk to other people, and we don't do that very well in the federal government. We don't know what's going on. And so that, to me, was a risk. To go and
it was a risk to me, too. And everyone laughed. Everyone thought it was funny.
And the courage was to do it anyway.
Yeah.
Right? Sometimes you have to take risks and do what people aren't expecting, because it will start the conversation. Again, why are we here today? To keep the conversation moving. This is a very important part of our learning.
Right. I think boldness, commitment to an ideal. We all live in this world of skepticism, and we just shed all that stuff. And we thought, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how many people tell us we're crazy. We want this. This is a benevolent thing. It's a good thing for the world. We believe the technology is there to make it happen, and we're not going to be put off by any of this nonsense. And people did talk about it. People still talk about the zero-funded notion. So I want to say that when we submitted this paper, first off, the submissions to TMF were like 1.5 pages long. So I know I've bored you already for like 15, 20 minutes on this, but we had 1.5 pages. So what we put in, of course, was an image, because that's how I am. And I had no idea whether they would even replicate an image in the document. But what it says here is, imagine a federal workforce that is a model for other governments and for industry. Imagine a federal workforce that functions as an agile, integrated team within and between agencies. Imagine that. So we're not one NSF with 1,200 employees. We're mixing in with everybody. If we have somebody that has the right skills, they can go anywhere. Imagine that employees move freely in and out of the federal workforce. That's even better, because we have people in this room who have done that. And I think that what happens when you move out of the federal government is you learn, you have empathy for other people, what's going on the vendor side. I mean, we've both been contractors. Then imagine that now here's the most important element. It's about an individual making a choice. Imagine that you, a federal employee, have the power to chart the path of your own career and dedicate time each day to both executing your current job functions and building skills needed for your next job. Okay, so you know the government's going to have trouble hiring. You've heard about something, I don't know, furlough. So, but imagine that what the government gives you is this opportunity for continuous growth. So you might not be earning as much, but or you might be earning more. Who knows? Money isn't the issue. You know, you're committed to the mission, and you get to propel yourself forward. Imagine that you carry on a continuous conversation with your leadership. Imagine an app that knows your skills, your strengths, your preferences, recommends future careers, suggests growth paths like classwork, detail opportunities, work out, blah, blah. Imagine that. So now there's the X. The X at the end is this beautiful future.
So what Dorothy just described there was how we turned our vision from a technology vision enabling this into a vision of what it feels like to be an employee in the future. And we didn't ask you to imagine what the constraints would be to get there. We asked you to imagine that you were there and operated in that environment, and that technology could enable you to sift through the massive amounts of data you can't get through by yourself and serve up to you opportunity, right? Because it's there. We're not matching it yet, right? This next stream of efforts that just popped in here says, President's Management Agenda, Cross-Agency Priority Goal 3, which we're all familiar with, Workforce for the 21st Century. What happened here is in the middle of our thinking, shortly after the previous slide that Dorothy just showed, shortly after we crystallized our vision, Dorothy and I get invited to the PMA rollout here in D.C. that happened at GSA in April of last spring. And at that session, we didn't really know what to expect, but when we got there, we were each given a little piece of paper, and it said which room you were going to on the breakout. And so Dorothy says, are we in the same room? Let's get in the same room, and we're not. And so
that's a killer for me. I can't read, right?
So Dorothy goes off to one room about IT modernization, and I go into a room called Workforce for the 21st Century. And I'm the only IT person in a room full of HR practitioners. They are the experts. And at the head of the table are leaders from OPM, and we start talking about challenges and opportunities around PMA, Cap Goal 3, and there are 3 pillars. The first one is performance, the second is reskill, redeploy, and the third one is hiring. And 40 minutes into the session, every single person has talked about hiring and how hard it is. And towards the end, I decided that I would be bold and follow my fearless leader and take a risk. And I stood up next to a few chicos that I was sitting next to who barely knew me, and I said, I'm going to start by saying that I enter this conversation from the IT lens, and I don't know anything about workforce, right, from a practitioner's perspective. But here's what we do know. IT modernization is happening. It will never stop. It will never move slower than it is today. IT is a driver of the need for reskilling and redeploying in the middle pillar that you're showing. But what we also know is that IT is an enabler for reskilling and redeploying in a way that we believe private industry is already doing some of it today. And so if we can turn our attention to how we leverage these advanced technologies to enable the workforce to reskill and redeploy, I would encourage this room to do that. And so I took that bold risk. Dorothy comes in at the end, and they invite her to be the executive co-lead of the PMA Cap Goal 3 for reskill and redeploy, and thus starts another leg of our journey.
Yes, thank you, Robyn. Yeah. So I'm sitting there, workforce. Oh my God! And so at the table, I'm like, thanks, Robyn. She keeps dragging me into things. I think it's really important to understand that I get invited to things because I have a title. Robyn makes her way in. So there's a lot more. I've also have courage, but Robyn is not a person with a title, and she has a voice. Because
I am a person like all of you.
Right, and I think that's the most important thing is that she really uses me to get a foot in the door. I have some good qualities too, not many, but it's important for all of you to understand that you don't have to be the CIO to make a big difference. So what happened was we were then invited to the CIO. Oh gosh. Okay, so then on the workforce, Are we going into the boot camp now?
Yeah.
Okay, so on the workforce side of things, the IT people are used to talking about cyber and bots and stuff like that, and that's what my background really is. But on the cyber committee, I'm the co-chair of, I'm also the only IT person on there. In fact, at the next level up, we met with the whole workforce group, and I was the only IT person there. So at every level on Cap Goal 3, there were HR people everywhere, and I was like, I didn't have the language. And really, I still am not, I don't really have the language. So it's hard to be an outsider. But anyway, so we get invited at the CIO boot camp. So every year there's a CIO boot camp that the CIO Council sponsors, and for some reason they asked us to talk about this. And so we had a room like this, and we had papers on all of the tables. So I think.
So this is where everybody now needs to just, wake up, stretch. Get out a piece of paper and a pen. If you're at home, if you have one here, get out a piece of paper and a pen. If you don't, we're going to ask you to participate in this exercise in your brain, and this is not an optional exercise.
That's right. So at one point here, you're going to be closing your eyes. So if you have valuable items, put them somewhere. Put them somewhere, or sit alone. Okay. So here's how this exercise begins. I see everyone tucking their phones in. Okay. Thank you. Put that phone away. Oh, okay, fine. Sure you are. So we're going to do a little dancing later. Okay, so who is Atlas? Well, Atlas he's kind of a half man, half God, he or she, typically a man. And he has the job, it's actually sort of a punishment, he has the job of carrying the world around on his back, and that's a heavy responsibility. And I can tell you that there are a lot of days where I feel like this. I feel like, oh my God, there's all these problems in the world. I can't face it another day, but it's my job. I have to trudge forward. Especially those of us who are not, like at NSF, there are scientists. There's a lot of research scientists, and those guys don't quite have this feeling. They have the feeling of wanting to do research, and they're rewarded by the work itself often. But in the IT world or the administrative world, HR, or budget, you're just carrying around the mission. It's not really you're not mission. You're not the center of the mission. So a lot of times I feel like this, and that's what I'm going to assume you feel like. You feel some weight for making the mission occur. And what I want to do is change that paradigm. I want those of us who are supporting the mission to actually be driving the mission in such a way that, as we've been describing, we make it better, we make it faster, we make it more agile. So it's not a burden for us, it's a pleasure. And it's an important, the things we can contribute to our mission make this world a better place. Is it possible to start with the end in mind? Covey. You guys know Covey, 7 Habits. Love that book. Only book I've ever read in my life. Okay, now you're going to get a chance to imagine. This is it, everybody. Yes, you. You can imagine big and bold. So take away all the, I only work 40 hours a week, and I'm tired, and Dorothy's a little bit boring. She thinks she's funny, but she's not. And think about the world as if the world you wish it was, not the world that it is. Really big. You don't have a mortgage. Think about your agency's mission, because a lot of us, especially federal government people, are driven by the mission. It keeps us going. How do you think information technology can be leveraged at your agency, say, 10 years from now? No constraint. There's not a budget constraint. There's not a resource constraint. If you could do anything you wanted to improve the mission of your agency using technology, what would that look like?
Well, giving you here permission to imagine how cool it can be with technology helping every step of the way without the fear of the displacement. That's the story that's out there today, right? So take this opportunity to give yourself permission to imagine that from your agency's perspective or where you sit. 10 years from now, it looks like this.
Okay, so I'm going to give you guys a few minutes. There are
talking-
people in the audience
There are
laughing.
people that are talking about the exercise.
We come from Treasury, so our what I whispered to him was, great, we're using 1978 technology.
Great. So bring yourself all the way, though.
10 years from now?
So you bring yourself into the 80s.
Right now.
Go to
okay.
go. No,
Okay.
go all the way.
We went
You
much
get that.
further than that. So again, don't bring your baggage with you. Check it. Okay? Check your baggage.
Right. Forget where you are.
Don't take it on the airplane with you.
And by the way, I'm very cynical, so you know. I'm an extremely sarcastic person. But I want you to know.
Very optimistic to assume that we would advance 10 years in 10 years. So.
No, you're going to advance. You have to go 50 years. Sorry. You're so far behind that your imaginations have to really leap.
Yeah.
And think about things. When you're doing this imagination, think about the world in the commercial world. I'm closing my eyes now. Imagine what your normal life is like versus what your work life is like. There's a big gap, right? Now push it even further than that. What is it? What do you think? Allow yourself this. I'm going to force you to think silently for the next minute, and I don't have a second hand. Okay, Treasury guys. Give another 30 seconds. Okay. Did anybody think of anything good? I'm not going to ask you what your thoughts are, but I'm going to show you what happened with mine. I need the glasses, I'm sorry. These are small letters, but what happened with me was I said, okay, what if blockchain, which is a complicated new risky technology, in federally funded research, improves cross-agency public-private partnerships, thank you, and discovery leaps forward. So one of the things we struggle with a lot at NSF is who else is funding the same research that we're funding? Well, we can't really, there's barriers to understanding that. So wouldn't it be great if we really knew that we were funding the most important things? And blockchain is a technology that allows secure data sharing. Okay, so then the next thing I thought about was that AI saves time for program managers. Those are the guys who are doing the research. So it improves the review process, and we get better results. So every research project we finish gets a Nobel Prize. Bots in the Budget and Finance Office reduce entry errors and eliminate data entry tasks. Chatbots provide high-quality user support and reduce the need for customer support analysts. And I'd like a milkshake and burger.
So Dorothy presented this vision, and she said, Robyn, what if this throws all the people out? Right? That's the common story. Now I've got blockchain. I don't need the program officer who used to do that. I've got AI. I don't need the program manager who used to do some of that work. We don't need as many help desk people on the administrative side, and the finance people go away. And that was not an acceptable outcome.
So how do we get them? And here's part of, I'm going to be very pragmatic for this one moment. Then I'll veer off again. But how can we possibly build a blockchain solution or a bot or a chat bot without the people who have the knowledge to do the work? So if the image of the people being thrown out is real, then we will never accomplish that mission because they won't help us get there. So we need the people. Not only do we want them, but we need them because they have the business knowledge to do the facilitation, to make the systems do the right thing. So practically speaking, we cannot get to this future vision without all of those people closely engaged and wanting the change. They have to want it. We need them all. That's the conclusion of our imaging thought, except that it becomes even more complicated because this is not one and done. This is not you modernize and then you stop. The world's not going to slow down. This is only going to happen continuously and faster and faster. And so we have to get into a regime, cover your mouth when you yawn, that goes for all of you, that that allows us to continuously do this.
And so we, at the center of this vision, put the passion in the middle, right? We said, as we're bringing people along with us to implement blockchain, to add AI, to build bots, can we also leverage this AI, bots, things like that, to continuously reskill the employees and redeploy them? Might those people become bot supervisors someday?
And
might those people have
I want to talk for just 1 second for those of you who are image people. The reason there's a circle in the middle and it's this project, I did not, when I was thinking about the mission, I did not imagine this project. I imagined a lot of very mission-specific projects, but in the end, none of them would be any use to me without the project in the center, which is this project. Got it?
Yep.
So perhaps we can do this. And maybe, maybe it's not just NSF. You go.
So because Dorothy and I are who we are, we can't stop at just NSF. When we're thinking about the vision that we articulated earlier, and we're talking about the NSF workforce being mobile between federal agencies, we're not talking about NSF anymore. We're talking about the federal government, right? So could a technology solution facilitate a workforce revolution? Can we put the power back in the hands of the people? Could IT be leveraged to make education and lifelong learning important priorities, not just for the NSF workforce, but for the federal workforce? And can that just become a way of being here? We think so, right? And so this little image in the middle here is the building is all the federal workforce. Imagine yourself moving between offices, between agencies. Right now, I am supporting NSF for this challenge, and I'm on detail to another federal agency, learning about the HR language that we're a little bit lacking in understanding of. And I've just made that mobility dream come true a little bit. I'm amplifying this in the future dream as a normal thing, that we all carry badges that get us into every agency and we go apply our skills there.
I'm going to say something about that, too. I think this is a very hard thing to do. I know it's not, it was hard for Robyn to make the step to go to this other agency. Part of what's happened to both of us as human beings during this process is that we have both learned from the conversation ourselves. And, I'm trying to go back for a graduate degree. Robyn's taking a detail. We're also forcing ourselves into this mold, and it isn't easy. So one of the things in your silent moments while you're thinking about today might be, what should I do next? What is in it for me? Where I'm not just doing my job. They're talking to me, too. It's not just making it happen and making the conversation happen. It's about you. This is about you.
In that image 10 years from now, you're there, too, and you're doing something, and it's probably not what you're doing today. But you might be leveraging the same skills and attributes and passions and desires that you bring to your work today in a different role, function, job in the future, or many. That's the idea. So if we can imagine a workforce transformation app and get to on any device. A few more clicks, please. That's okay. Can we use artificial intelligence to match the current workforce with an agency's future needs? Can we allow people to choose their own opportunities and prepare for them? Can we encourage mobility to redeploy those resources continuously to meet the federal government's needs? We believe that an enabling mechanism in the middle can spark a culture change. And so,
we have a white screen
so
here.
many clicks.
Okay, so here we go. Advanced technologies are here, and they will continue to present new opportunities for us, and we're preparing for it, and we can embrace it and support our mission and make it fly.
And so we did that with this group over the summer. We did that visioning exercise. Remember, we talked to you about our journey. We started, we were thinking, we came up with an original idea, then the PMA, we got into that one, and then we got invited to the CIO boot camp. And we're coming towards the end of the summer, and we're asking ourselves, where are we going to cobble together the tools to build this at NSF and try it for ourselves? That's where we were.
We've been rejected. We've been rejected by oh
yeah, nobody wants to give us the money.
Right, nobody wants to give us money. So we've been rejected by the TMF. At the PMA, there was also an ask. There was millions of dollars that you could ask for money from the capital team. We asked and got zero. Okay, so were we discouraged?
Right. No.
It has to happen.
Anyway.
It has to happen, right?
And so now we're nearing the end of the summer, and we hear about this thing called the Gear Center, and somebody says, hey, these people at OMB want to talk to NSF about the Gear Center. And you say, what's the Gear Center? Right? It's called the Government Effectiveness Advanced Research Center. It's still a concept at this point. It's not real, but I believe it needs to be real. And what I learned about the Gear Center, which I'll talk to you a bit more about in a second, is that if I could imagine the Gear Center being real at that point in time, I wouldn't have needed to build this tool myself. And I'm probably not the one with the most information about what tools are out there that could be cobbled together to create this suite of functionality and this journey for people. And so why should we build it? Right? And so let's go one slide forward. I'm just going to quickly touch on the Gear Center, and it's important because all of these things come together. Remember, NSF was doing something. The President's Management Agenda had something. The Gear Center is related to the President's Management Agenda. It's envisioning a way of doing things faster and in a crowdsourced way in the future. And you could get to this on performance.gov. Here's the key about the Gear Center. Bring together experts in an interdisciplinary approach, right? Not just experts from the federal government and not just experts from IT, from outside the federal government, from beyond the function that you're sitting in, and can the center then bring these people together in a conversation, leveraging advanced technologies and no constraints prescribed thinking to help the government catch up with where the private sector is, right? So where you are at home instead of where you are at your agency today. And so that was a pivotal moment for us there. We were asking ourselves, what do we do?
Yeah, we can't build this thing. We don't want to build this thing. Okay, the tool is going to make some vendor millions of dollars. Do you guys like the idea? Would you buy it for $25?
Download it on your iPhone?
People, they're skeptical, but some of you might. Free app. Your agency buys it for you. Would you download it then? Maybe.
We're getting nothing.
Maybe.
Hey guys,
we're getting
on the phone that you
I hope there's some nods on the phone.
For it
exactly.
In the App Store right now.
Exactly.
You just bought this.
You just want it? You bought it.
We already bought it. Yeah.
But
no, it's an app. But it doesn't work. Software.
But it doesn't work. There you go. So
yeah. Okay, let's talk later.
Yeah, really. So we don't want to build it. We know it exists. We know the components exist, but we haven't seen them assembled in a way that is acceptable. And so we've asked for money a few different ways, and we think, okay, if we could bring leading edge, like IT algorithm thinking, researchy thinking about how to make these best matches together with, so that's a research thought. If we could bring the research together with the people who are going to make a lot of money by building and selling the tool, and we could make the government's requirements. So the government provides requirements, education or higher education provides algorithms and advanced technology, and the private sector provides the funds and builds the tool and makes the profit. If we could somehow get those people together, we think that this vision could come to pass. And so we are thinking, but how do we do that? What is the mechanism to bring those people together? And, we were talking about this morning. I don't remember the moment that it became clear to us. I think the only opportunity we had, I went to the director. This is what happened. So I work for the director because FTAR requires the CIO to report to the director. So that's a convenient thing. I'm in favor of that. And I said, we've tried all these different things. I think this is a great idea. What do you think about giving us $100,000? And she said, okay, you've tried every other venue. I think it's a great idea too. Why don't you do it? So then we thought the way to get the word out was through a challenge. I had come from DARPA. DARPA has done grand challenges for many years, so I had some experience with grand challenges, but I had no experience putting a challenge together myself. So we call challenge.gov, and we start talking to them about what they can do to help. They have a beautiful site. The problem is that the people in NSF who are using that site have hired contractors to build their so that the site would take you to a second site, The second site was built by a contractor. The contractor would do the outreach to get people to come to your site in challenge.gov. So, and we had no time and no money. So we went ahead and, again, another very bold move was we did it ourselves. We said challenge.gov, using challenge.gov directly is free. So if you have any ideas about a challenge that you want to post, it's free to use. The challenge.gov people were happy to have us because they were releasing a new product, or they were upgrading their product, and they wanted some guinea pigs. So we were happy to do that. And so we did the outreach ourselves. We were very naive. We did some big mistakes. We'll talk about those later. And finally, we kept trying and trying to get it out. It was very hard. And we saw Christmas coming. We saw the holidays coming now. And so here we are at the end of the summer thinking we've got to get this out. This idea now has been around since January, and as you know, you're buying products that do the same thing. So we're thinking we got to get this out. We go and we force ourselves to just throw B-work over the fence and put a proposal on challenge.gov that says, if you have any ideas about how this could be done, send them to us. The best 5 ideas will get $5,000. Like I've seen radio shows give away more than that, right? So $5,000 for the best 5 ideas. Okay, then that's part 1. Part 2 is we'll post these 5 great ideas, and then industry or anybody else who wants to build a prototype can go ahead and do that. Oh, that's great. We'll give that person the winning prototype one winner $75,000 because you do the math. 100,000 minus 25, 75. And we're giving them the leftovers. And
we didn't spend a dime on anything.
Nothing else. Right. None of this costs money.
Us feds were working real hard because we weren't hiring anybody else.
Right. So it was a great learning experience. So we get the challenge.gov the day. So we got so much good advice. Don't post this right before a 3-day weekend. Don't post this on the way into Christmas. And we're just like, we have to go. We've waited too long already. We have to go. I believe the day we saw this appear on the compass, first off, the first time they put it up, it was wrong. But the second time they put it up was within 15 minutes. They were so supportive. And we were just ecstatic.
Yeah.
It was like early November.
Yeah, I'll tell you that we were so focused and intent on getting it out. And at the very last minute, that morning we were still talking with general counsel at the agency. These things are not easy to do, but it's worth it. Okay, so if you take some things away from here today, it's to take risks, to keep pushing, right? And because if it's an idea that you believe in, you just keep going for it. It's not going to happen tomorrow, but it will eventually. And that morning we were talking to general counsel, and as soon as we got approval, challenge.gov had it up within minutes, and I called my mom and said happy birthday. I did not call her before that because I completely was focused on the challenge.
We were crazy. And, there was a lot of no's. A huge number of no's. And here was one of the images. We also had to learn how to tweet, how to put things on, right?
As IT people, we don't tweet.
I don't tweet. I'm 60 years old. And then and what was the other thing? LinkedIn. We're all getting into all these media things that we were not. I still don't do the hashtag thing. But, all these social media things. And then we post it and we think, who's going to apply?
So Dorothy's really worried about this, right?
And you were worried.
During the furlough.
Oh, my God.
No, you might recall the conversation. You're like, Robyn, do we know how many submissions we've had? Because we're shut down. I said, no, we're shut down. I'm not worried about that.
Oh, God.
We might only get one. Bar was really low, guys.
Yeah, we called people and asked, did you submit? And they were like, no, I'm not submitting. I don't have enough overhead money to submit. We just thought we would get I thought we'd be lucky to get 2. I thought we'd be lucky to get 2 submissions.
I hoped for 5.
Yeah.
5 was going to be good enough. We got almost 60. Right?
They're brilliant. These ideas that came in are so good.
We can't be specific because we're still in judging right now, but we got what we wanted. We wanted to reach academia. We got academia. We wanted to reach private sector. We got private sector. We wanted to reach people, individuals like you and me who have ideas about what we want our future to look like. We got them. Right?
Some feds, some individuals.
And I'll tell you, it's a very well-rounded scope of individuals that we're hearing from. The submissions and they get it. They seem to understand it. One of the things we wondered was,
how could anybody possibly understand
it
it?
For so long,
right?
That maybe we didn't articulate it in a way that people can actually respond to it. And if you've had a chance to go on challenge.gov and read through it, I wonder how you connected with it. Call us, tell us later. We have submissions that we're pretty proud of this, and we have.
They're beautiful. The submissions are great, and these people are doing it for virtually no money, and they're giving away their ideas. So think about this: you're a commercial enterprise, and you're giving away your idea about how to do this. It's unbelievable, really, that people participated the way they did.
So you might recall that at the beginning, Dorothy introduced her concept of projects and learning. We've been learning in little pieces all along the way. We learned we shouldn't buy a tool. We learned we weren't going to get money from TMS. We learned how to launch a Career Compass Challenge. But we also learned some things we could do better next time, right? So some of these things that we've learned so far is that technical challenges can be overcome. GSA's challenge.gov team is incredible. They're not just technical experts. They understand challenges and how to structure them, and you should be working with them and not go through other people to the extent that you can. We learned that we could leverage our own governance and communications leads to build beautiful images to brand a Career Compass Challenge. And we learned now the process for working with NSF's legal department and also the director to talk about its IT challenge. NSF does research challenges. Research is intended to net a benefit decades from now.
Right.
We were
so
talking
if you guys
about something today.
So if you guys are in agencies that don't do challenges, that's not relevant. This capability is available, and because we thought this is an NSF-ish thing because of the challenge notion, turns out it's completely different than NSF challenges, and NSF didn't want us necessarily, they didn't understand it because it wasn't about advanced research. So they were very helpful, but they were confused.
But we learned we could push through all of that and do it quickly. We also learned we needed more press leading up to the launch. So when we were doing all of the work, we couldn't also be out there communicating about all of it, right? We needed the strength of a network. We needed to be talking about it a lot earlier, which is one of the things that this group has allowed us to expand our reach in that way. We're really grateful for that. And we learned that, and we knew a little bit of this from our time as being on the vendor side, that in many cases, industry didn't want to participate. One of the reasons is because if you've been on the vendor side, you understand that in order to write a proposal that's overhead time, you want to ensure you're going to get some return on that investment. In this case, you're almost guaranteed not to get a return on investment, right? And so some of the people we talked to, if they weren't going to do it on their own time at home, they weren't allowed to bill it to overhead and do it at work. The other thing that we learned is that there was some concern about intellectual property rights in Part 1, and we had to be very clear that in Part 1 what we were looking for was ideas. Ideas cannot be copyrighted. It's not a thing, right? So as long as you don't give me your intellectual property in a technological solution and you're telling me about a concept and how you might approach it and how it might work, then there's no concern. And when you come to Part 2 of the challenge, we're not sharing your prototype with anybody else. That's all your intellectual property. And so we had some opportunities to clarify the messaging as we went along, but for next time, this won't be the last, we'll keep going. And then lastly, target audiences are really important. I've spent some time talking to people in academia during the holiday time, and I thought to myself, maybe we missed a target audience. At NSF, our reach goes mostly to universities and research, high research volume universities. The players in this space for continuous reskilling and redeploying when you're talking about alternative learning methods might be community colleges, right? We didn't get to them. So these learnings will just go in the book as we continue to go along, and we'll build on it.
And that's why I think the notion of getting a B is a very important one, and I'm serious about it in that we felt a pressure to proceed even though we knew it wasn't perfect, and it's good enough. It's better than not moving.
Right, because the goal was to start the conversation, right? The goal was not to have a product we could use immediately, right? You can't do that through a challenge. You give somebody an award and they walk away. So we never had the intent of having a product we could leverage immediately. We always had the intent of spreading the word, okay? And so we're going to continue to do that. At the end of this month, stay tuned. We're going to announce the winners of Part 1. There can be up to 5. Hopefully we'll have 5. And when we announce them, we will try to publish those ideas out broadly, probably through the challenge.gov website, to say, here's the ones we liked, people. If you want to participate in Part 2, take a look at what we like over here. And we'll also have, probably early April, in the first 2 weeks of April, we'll have a webinar, and we'll talk about what we liked in the concepts. And we'll probably pull out, because so many people got it, we'll pull out nuggets from other non-winning submissions and highlight those and elevate those as deserve some recognition for the good thinking that's going on. And then we will launch Part 2 April 15th. We'll launch Part 2 on April 15th, and then we will continue through July 12th when Part 2 closes, and we'll take about a month to test the prototypes internally, and we hopefully will announce the winner. We're looking for a functional prototype.
So don't worry, if you didn't participate in Part 1, you can still jump in on Part 2. That $75,000 is out there waiting for you. I'm rushing now because it's 11 o'clock. I think our time is up officially, and I know people on the phone are going to start hanging up.
We have time.
11:30.
Oh, we have till 11:30. Okay. Let's try. Okay, sorry about that.
No, it's okay.
So
we don't have much left.
Yeah, so you're going to think of, everybody busily think of your questions now. So we believe you should just do things. You take action. You have, let's see what else it says. Participate. Please do. You know what? One of the things Robyn was saying on the prior slide was that some people of the 60 had part of the idea but not the whole idea. And we wish those people could find each other because they're and we're still struggling with how to get that to happen. But it's not it's not over. I mean,
the notion in Part 2 that's a little bit different than Part 1 is that we do hope people come together and work together. When I talked about the Gear Center earlier, I talked about it being a collaboration venue where people come together and they say, I have this advanced technology, I don't understand the adult cognition part behind it. Can you help me, academia? And I don't really understand the barriers and constraints to making this a possibility in the federal government. Can you help me, federal government, understand how the business operates there? And if we can all come together, then might we get something that's useful, right? The notion in Part 2 is that there's some kind of partnership that's forming. And we don't know how to do that yet. If you have ideas, please email us.
Truly.
But we're really hoping that happens, and we're going to learn from it, and we'll do it better next time. When we talked about the barriers, from where you sit, you've already thought of maybe a list of 100 things about why this will never happen, right? The GS scale, job classifications, training budgets, I want you to think about the barriers, and I want you to think about what power and influence you have from where you sit to start tackling a little piece of the barrier that you have access to. It will take all of us to get there eventually someday, but we can't do it if you see the barrier and don't tell somebody about it.
Right? Also, you have to ask yourself, is the barrier real? So I think a lot of the things that we came up against, people complaining about this and that, thinking it's not going to happen, they weren't real they're not real barriers. They're barriers that we imagine to be there. It's not a law that says you can't go from a GS-9 to a GS-13 directly. It's there's things, there's practices, there's things, but it's not necessarily a rule.
The way that we've always done it doesn't mean it's the way it has to be done. It's the way that we've been able to imagine it being done thus far. So if we can look at the objective at the end and think differently about how to get there within the rules, right? Not the ones that we added on, but the ones that are really there, then I think that we can start to break down some of these imaginary barriers.
And the other thing is that the government is open to changing the rules. So for those of you who are on the Fed side, who is it that made that rule? And does that person understand that the rule is a barrier? So one of the things I have become exposed to is how excited the federal government is about modernizing. And that, we're used to sitting on our hands kind of thinking it's not going to happen. But, imagine that it doesn't happen. Then what? Well, no, but so where will the federal government, where will the federal government be in 10 years if we keep doing things the way we're doing them? Is that a real possibility? I don't think so. And then, of course, we need you to chat about this. So here we go again. I'm not going to talk through all these little lines because I've already done that, but this is the essence of it. So when you're home thinking about it, and how do you help get to this? And if you already have the application, how do you change your way of thinking about your own job and the jobs of the people around you? One of the things that really drove me to this is when managers say, I have a staff member and I can't get them to do something. That is not your job. It's their job. So how do you inspire that person in that chair to use the tool you have, if you have one, to look to the future and to make themselves, to put themselves into a place where they will be happier in the future? This is not on the leaders as much as it is on the people. And so that's the most critical piece for me. So then I'd like to thank you, and Robyn would like to thank you as well. I'm applauding Robyn. So, does anybody?
Yeah, we've got a couple questions coming in through the chat pod. We'll start, if there's anybody in the room that has a question, then I'll do a couple of the chat pod ones, and we'll open it up to the phone as well.
All right.
Is there anything in the room?
Yes.
Dorothy, you said that Robyn is a reader and she takes in information that way. How do you get your information in if you're not a reader?
So I believe that I'm probably dyslexic. I mean, in my day, we didn't diagnose these things. But I did take a very long time to learn to read, but somehow I faked it. I think that images make a lot of difference to me, color, the things I hear and see. And I can read. It's just that I don't get a lot of information out of the things I read. So, you know, it's important. Some people are good at public speaking and other people don't like to public speak but like to write the words. Other people, you know what I mean? It's just, so I'm basically an experiential learner. Maybe that's the term they would use today for that.
Okay, I've got a question coming in from the chat pod.
How about you? What kind of learner are you?
All.
You learn every way. Okay, you're a good partner. He's a good partner for everyone in the room. Just take a look. Okay.
Okay, this question was, why did y'all specifically choose challenge.gov and not like NASA Center for Excellence in Collaborative Innovation or other resources?
I think that part of it was because we knew of challenge.gov. And remember, we were moving so quickly, we were going with what we knew, the path of least resistance. Also, it was free, right? And it was easy to get to, and they were incredibly helpful and forward-leaning. There was no reason really not to work.
So, and so a lot of, and this is again a flaw, we only knew who we knew. So I have, you know, I'm on the CIO Council, I work with GSA. GSA has a lot of interaction with us, CIOs. So, you know, they were near. I think that if you go out to challenge.gov, you will see a lot of NASA challenges on there. So in that regard, I think, and DARPA too, everyone does challenges through this portal. I would say I didn't know there was another free option. So I took the path that I knew.
Other question, do other agencies know, I guess other federal agencies know about this challenge, or how can, then I guess the follow-up would be how can we get the word out better?
That's a great question. We hope other agencies know. We know not all of them know, which is why we're here. So I would say to get the word out, start sending around the link. Get me on LinkedIn, guys. All right, reshare everything that I have. Look at the challenge, start sharing it with people. Every person that I meet that's talking about this workforce area of interest, we'll have a conversation, and by the end I'll say, have you heard about what NSF is doing for the Career Compass Challenge? And I will follow up with an email, and I'll send them the link and just ask them to read it.
So I'm going to add to that. If you have an official communications path that you use within your agency, we have a set of communications package that has, you know, it has the image, the text, and things like that. So I think if you would contact either Robyn.
You can email Career Compass Challenge at nsf.gov, and we will give you materials to tweet. So that's Career Compass Challenge, all one word.
Right.
At nsf.gov.
Ask for what you want. So we also have like little newspaper articles. So if you have a newspaper that you publish in your organization and you want to get it out that way, we have done the work. We just don't know who to give it to. And that was one of the things we were doing at the last minute was like, do you have a way of getting this out? Do you have a way? Do you have a way? So we were begging. So thank you for that question.
Yep.
Robyn, you may have already gone down this path, but two groups that are in this and have communications path are the Chico Council and the CLO Council.
Yes, thank you. So we did, I believe, reach out to all of the councils.
So I briefed the CLO Council. They were very excited about it and helpful. It's very interesting how HR people respond to this differently than non-HR. Is that anybody here an HR person before I insult you? Oh, my God, you're all HR people. So HR people have a much more, they see the barriers more quickly than the IT people do. And so the chief learning officers did say things like, this vendor has a tool it's already bought, it just doesn't do this one thing. I think the elements that I have not seen yet in any product are looking beyond what's available in the next year. So I need to know about careers that don't exist yet. Because if you look at with the gaps today, like cybersecurity or data science, it's because those things emerge so quickly. And people can do that stuff. It's not...
There are skill sets that might be
right.
able to fit there. The question is, how do I as a person understand where my skill sets can be aligned to a number of different functions, that I can slot them into different places and leverage them in different functions in a way that my mom grew up in the HR discipline from a junior to an HR director, right? She was there her whole career. I was educated in communications, and I went into IT, and now I'm working in an HR function. And so I've slotted my skills around.
Yes.
Right?
So we all come from different places. I wanted to be a painting. So, it doesn't take, and I am an IT person now, that was the work I did, but it doesn't matter what your basic training is in. It matters what higher level, are you a good communicator? Are you a good team player? People that are great cybersecurity people are people who love doing puzzles. I was thinking yesterday that we should, there's people all over the place, these gamers, people who sit at home and play games. Those are great potential cyber candidates. Sorry, we're leaving this. Thank you.
So, expanding on kind of what you just mentioned right now regarding, the evolution of these roles, you're talking about identifying potential skill sets to fill what that role might look like. But as you think about that role, how do you maintain a holistic viewpoint on what kind of skills are even going to be needed for that future, like what that role is going to look like? Because, you mentioned you can, take over aspects of a person's job with the bot and then have that person manage the bot, but now they might not need to use a whole lot of time for that.
Right,
so what strategic function can they gather from that? What is the downstream, upstream effect on other people involved in that workflow? And how do you kind of take that into account when developing that role?
The way I answer that is I think it doesn't. I use this Iceman analogy. So, like there used to be, before there were refrigerators, there were men and women, I guess, but mostly I imagine them to be men, that dragged around carts of ice and put the ice in the compartment under the refrigerator to keep things cold. And then the refrigerator comes along. So you imagine that the Iceman, maybe he became a refrigerator delivery guy or a refrigerator repairman, and now refrigerators don't need to be repaired. So what happens to this guy? So this is not new, right? And so what I would say is that guy could be a great yoga instructor. Who knows? So it's not necessarily a logical path from where you are today to where you will want to be in the future. It depends on what you want. And that, what I believe, and if you look at, everyone talks about millennials. Robyn is
I didn't know that.
But this notion, this notion that people will have changing careers, and they could be very different. What if you opened a flower shop? Who knows? What is it that you like? Because what we want is to get to what people are best at, where you're most happy. That's where you're going to make the greatest contribution on the planet. So if you are an Iceman and you are, so it's not, once you develop the bot, you might leave that area of business completely. You might leave the government. You might, so it's not, that's why it's important, the breadth of this is important. if we do it just at NSF, that's one thing, because we are limited to the opportunities really that are there and the kinds of people that think there. But what we want is for it to be everywhere, so we can all, grow and change over our lives. Our lives are long.
So I think that to add to that, what Dorothy's describing is this notion of change has always happened and it will always continue to happen, so how do you get people used to that? And I think that what we're trying to do through this vision that we're exploring is we're trying to flip the fear into opportunity, right? So what you just described when you asked the question were all the bad things that could happen to, freeing up time, and what do you do with them? If they don't need as much time, you don't need as many people, you don't need all this stuff. And what we're saying is, imagine if you had freed up time and you also could understand and imagine all the various possibilities for you within your mission or another mission. And then you could choose what to do with that. At the core of this, in my personal opinion, everybody in the future will have to have these core essential employability skills, I've heard them referred to as. What are those things? Self-awareness, teamwork, communication, strategic thinking, the things that are uniquely human that computers can't do for us yet. When you free up your time from entering data into a spreadsheet, you're talking about the data with somebody, right? So now you have to be a skilled communicator, right? If you're making decisions with that data, you have to learn some more analytical thinking and maybe some risk-based tolerance thinking so that you can make decisions with the data. So the work changes, and people can change with it. That's the notion.
And actually, that's more what I was getting towards. Is how are you thinking about how the role strategically expands or evolves, but versus trying to take it from a negative perspective.
Right. Thank you. Yeah. So think about what more you could do. Right. And a lot of times, and I give this example because I grew up in a small town in Florida, and what I wanted to be when I grew up was limited by what I saw around me as opportunities. Right. And so when in high school they had a job shadowing day and they said, what do you want to be? And I said, an interior designer. They sent me to the local Haverty's showroom. And I spent the day dusting furniture, and I did not go to school for interior design, right? But if I imagine my kids trying to determine what they wanted to do, and we have all this data and just not enough time in the day to get through it all, but if the technology could help them understand what things they're naturally good at and what things could be possibilities, could they imagine themselves in that? Right? And could everybody then take advantage of that? And could my mother, who doesn't want to retire, find something that she could also be good at?
Her mother's like 10 years older than I am.
14.
14, okay.
Did you have a question?
I have something I wanted to ask about, which is based on some knowledge I have about the Department of Labor and what they're doing around the world of work writ large. Have you had an opportunity to talk with anybody there in the Bureau of Employment or any of the other types of, because I think the synergy that you would find with someone from that part, because they have community colleges is what triggered me, because they have a whole web of community college and work efforts underway where they have conferences and do things on a regular basis. I think that the synergy would just be incredible.
That's great. I would love to take advantage of that opportunity if you can put us in touch.
I don't even know who to get you in touch with, but I know who to talk to that can tell me who you should probably.
That's where we start. Do you see that? She's pushing past the barriers right there.
Thank you.
I'm kind of curious. I mean, you talked a lot about sort of a technology vision, right? You come from an IT background, but to really, make that vision a reality is a huge cultural piece, right? Both at an employee level, employees getting used to the concept of I got to pull up my app and I got to figure out what I'm going to do in 5 years. My job may or may not be here in 5 years, and also at a management level, in terms of getting managers and leaders in the organization to say, hey, we need to actually give people time to go look at the app, to do developmental opportunities, to do training, and all those kinds of things. So I'm curious, whether you guys have tackled that within NSF so far, and how those conversations have gone.
Well, I think NSF encourages one of the programs that the answer is, I think this is very hard. You're right. Cultural change is harder, and I'm going to go answer two ways. One is I think NSF has created a program that Robyn is a part of, which has helped her, inspire her to take the detail. So that part that she can talk to. I think Do you want to start with that? Why don't you go there?
I would say that it's to the point that Dorothy is making, NSF is one of the agencies that values continuous learning. And so it is a priority for our agency and for my supervisor to allow me to do this kind of stuff. I've been in a program for going on 2 years now at NSF where I was required to go to training, and my supervisor would not let me miss it. Even if she needed me to do something else, she said, Robyn, this is really important, you should go. Right? And
and I didn't like that because I wanted more for time.
And Dorothy said, you should be able to choose whether you want to go or not, Robyn. Right? And
come with me. We have a good talk to do.
But it's nice to be required to step away and learn something. When you come back, you apply it, right? Imagine, and we all do this to some extent. We wake up in the morning and we check the local, the rags, right, the newspapers and stuff like that. We see what's going on. That's context. When you bring that context to work, you're better informed about the things you're doing at your agency because you have the outside context. We should be doing that all the time, an hour at your desk every day, right? So it is a cultural change. I wouldn't say that we're 100% there yet because the app doesn't exist at NSF, but it depends on the agency and their leadership.
I think that's, and especially if you guys are in HR, it starts with you. You have to decide, is this the future that you want the Treasury? Do you want the Treasury to look like this? And who do you talk to if it's true? If you don't want it, then that's okay, too.
The other thing I just want to add here really quickly before I lose it, I'm sorry, Dorothy, is
okay.
that part of this concept, remember, is about, we might not have been very clear about it, but in the middle of this technology matching your skill with future opportunity, we mentioned quickly that it would serve up various learning opportunities for you. I think another important thing for us to jump over as a hurdle here is that not all training needs to be at a center or a university or in a class for 40 hours where you're gone. I learned from reading an article. I learned from watching a YouTube video. I learned from lots of different things. There are so many ways to access education today that if we can change our thinking about how an employee accesses something that makes them more valuable to the organization, that's not just formal training, and give them credit for that, then why shouldn't they be on the Internet searching for articles for an hour every day?
Right. It should be, the training component should be fun. I mean, again, these people who are playing games at home, they should be playing games at the office and learning some new thing. I think that it is very hard to, just like Robyn described between the two of us, I want her to learn new things. I want her to take this detail, and I hate losing her. So, I mean, we totally understand the dilemma that you're facing, but I think that if I had an employee who said, I don't want to learn anything new, I'd really like to do what I'm doing today, and I do have an employee, that's very interested in staying where she is, I think the thing is you have to say, well, when are you thinking of retiring? This job you're doing is going to be great for another 3 or 5 years. That's fine. Good. Stay there. If you're not, but people have to accept that. They have to accept that, there isn't going to be the same kind of work in the future. So if you want, and so it can be threatening to an individual, but, maybe you have to be startled for a moment. The thing that I feel is that you have to also, as a leader, describe this as an exciting opportunity. And I think that people will do more at the office. The people that work with you, if you say, by the way, I want you to take an hour a day and do this, if the thing they're doing is fun, they're going to do it for 2 hours and still get their own job done. So, it depends. It's about wanting. It's about what does that human being want to do. And one of the things they can want to do is leave the workforce. That's an option too, but we can't stay where we are. We can't continue. There are no typists anymore. How many people have secretarial duties written into their PDs in the federal government? I bet there's you do.
15,000 IRS.
There you go.
Open mail.
Terrible. But that's not a realistic way to live your life. And so those people right now, even though they say, I don't want to learn anything anymore, you know what? They also are afraid. They are afraid of, if they're 40, they're afraid of what's going to happen when they're 45. So let's eliminate the fear by giving them an option, by saying, pick something else. Look, there's a world of opportunity for you here. You may not believe it, but I'm going to help you achieve that. And it's that mindset that really makes a big difference, I think. And I can only say I've seen these things on a small scale, and it doesn't always work. But when it works, it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. When you inspire people to take control of their career, man, that's a win for you as a supervisor. It's a win for them as a person. It feels like a little bit of a loss when they fly away, but, you know, they do. That's really a win. I mean, best thing that could happen.
So I think maybe leadership, different agencies, their individual missions, sometimes get a little bit stuck on what does the future of their industry look like, or the future of their work based on the industry that they are part of, or that they're regulating, or whatever the case may be. So I just think that, because I do see a desire for this where I work, and it just seems like it's hard to translate, to envision what the future looks like, and then to translate that into competencies and skill sets, and then organize it in such a way that you can actually present it to people who have no idea about the occupation, or maybe the people that do know about it but just want to kind of prepare themselves for the next.
So my challenge for you,
future.
if you're an HR person and you're thinking in terms of skills and competencies in the GS levels, then my challenge for you would be imagine an HR process and system. Forget all those words. Imagine an HR process and system that would allow for this. What is it that we can do in the HR community that will make it easier for people to have this kind of life? Because that is the problem, I think, first off, I think that most agencies, most environments do not have the green X at the end. They do not have where will this agency be at the end in 5 or 10 years. And so you're asking the most important question. And you can't answer that. None of us as individuals can answer that. The leaders of the agencies have to answer that. So that's the first big hurdle. But even if you don't have that, so what we've done is we've tried to narrow the problem down so that the X that we have is something that we can envision and articulate without worrying about I don't care what the NSF, I do care, but I mean, I'm not focusing on what NSF will be like in 10 years. Do you know what I mean? So your problem is, what will the HR processes that support this vision look like? And
because
I don't know.
That's what they want to invest in, because that's the work that they do, and that's what they want to put their money in. You know.
Right, and that's what the HR systems of the future should be. And so some of the things that I really support in this are things like shared services. And here's why. I mean, if you're using a shared service HR system, then as the federal government modernizes the overall way that HR processes are done, you inherit that goodness without having to build it again yourself. So, you know, that's where Robyn and I are always looking for what do other people want that helps me get to where I want. Do you know what I mean? So everyone in this room is probably under 5 different pressures. But how do you take all those things? What one thing could you do that would solve 3 or 4 of those at once? And that's another part of the thinking that's why it was 3 swim lanes going together into the challenge. It wasn't like we had one AI idea. It's about knowing what all your problems are and trying to line them up.
So I think that one of the things that we find ourselves trapped in is a desire for specificity, right? And so one of the reasons why I'm on a detail to an HR shop is so that I can learn what the possible constraints are and how to talk in that language and maybe apply technology solutions to what could otherwise take a year to get to. But when I talk about specificity, what I mean is this. If you're looking at the future of your agency 2 years from now and what your workforce gaps might be and how you're going to strategically fill those workforce gaps and define the future competencies and skill sets and all of that, you're doing a lot of work for something 2 years from now you'll have to do again for 2 years from then, and then again a year later because things will move faster and faster and faster. How do we get to a place where we understand that some competencies and skills are going to be needed across all kinds of things and train our people in that all the time already, right? And then understand that we won't always be able to predict with specificity what the industry will look like that we're in, what the market is serving up, but if we could leverage tools to look at what kind of college courses are being offered, what are most students coming out of college with degrees in, where's the market for them? Could you then predict maybe that data science is going to be like a huge thing 10 years from now instead of this? And then so now you're working towards more analytical skill sets and things like that. So it's a leap of faith in some respects from a desire to always know exactly what it is you're looking for. And I understand that there are real reasons why you have to do things that way, because there are rules, right? There are laws and regulations.
This is where you have to get through the day. We all have to get through today as today is. But we also have to think, but how do I, and I will follow all today's rules. I mean, maybe I won't, but most people will follow all of today's rules. But I also have to invest something in that next thing. If I'm not investing a little some part of me into that next thing, then I'm ignoring the reality of the world, which is it's continuously changing. So
I'll just give you one quick example on this one, not to belabor it too much, but when I started having conversations with some peers in the HR function where I work, we immediately jumped to strategic workforce planning, and I have to start with a job analysis, and here's your project plan, and it's going to take us about a year. When should we get started? And I said, don't understand all of those words. Let's sit down, talk to me. So we had a couple of sessions, and I said, okay, so one assumption that I'd like to make going in is that my PD does not reflect what I do today, right? So please don't start with my PD in mind when you're doing a job analysis and asking me what kind of skills and capabilities I have that might map me toward a future job. And then the other assumption that I made is that everybody at our agency probably has some kind of unique PD. So we have 1,500 feds, we have 1,500 PDs, right? So that is a very long effort. But I also knew that we have tools that can turn PDF documents into machine-readable text, and that AI algorithms can look for similarities. And so if I group people in their job class and their grade level, all of their PDs together, could the machine pull out the commonalities and we have a generic PD? We can do that in 30 days, right? That's not something that we on the IT side can offer you on the business side if we don't understand your language, right? And so if we could do that, then you're taking this year-long effort and you're squishing it into something shorter, and you could focus more time on what does the future look like. So we're trying to get you to the world of possibilities here so that we can help each other get to the same place we all want to be.
So do we want to ask, our time looks like it's up.
Yeah, I was going to.
Is there anyone on the phone?
Anyone on the phone that have any questions I haven't asked yet?
Just say no, real loud. All right.
No.
Thank you. Yay. I love you. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
No, thank you all very much. We really appreciate it.